Hi there, I'm your host McAuley Tucker, and you're listening to The McAuley Tucker Show, the podcast where I sit down with some of the most accomplished and fascinating individuals in the entertainment and business industry. From celebrities to industry leaders, our guests offer unique perspectives and inspiring stories that will educate and inform you. Join me as I sit down with my next guest to cover their humble beginnings, challenges they faced, as well as their accomplishments in life. You are bound to learn something new, so sit back and enjoy the interview. Today on the show, we'll be having renowned and well-known director David Zucker, known for his films like Naked Gun and a few of the scary movie films. But today on the show, we'll be talking about one of his most well-known films, Airplane, in promotion of his new book that he is going to be releasing very soon, involving the movie and what it was like working on that film. So sit back, and I believe you'll enjoy the interview. So, Airplane, you've talked a lot about that, and that's a film that is so fun. It's such a great film, and you've been told that a lot. It's a great film, and so it's awesome to see you writing about that experience, and I've seen in conversations about that. It's a rich film.
The movie has had quite a life, as you know, in the 43 years since it was released, and I don't think, we expected it to be a hit because we had been telling every studio in town, this is going to be a big hit. You've got to do it. And nobody believed us. And then, so when it actually was out and it was a big hit, we had to admit we weren't surprised. But what we were surprised at was that it's lasted so long, because it's such a classic. The humor holds up, more than a lot of other comedies of that era or since. I mean, there's been a lot of successful comedies since Airplane, but I think Airplane seems to have, touched a nerve with somebody, but nobody ever knew the story behind it. Mm-hmm. And I thought the story was very interesting about how he did it, was actually inspiring, since we were so normal. We're just guys from Milwaukee. And we had this idea to do a certain kind of humor. We developed it on our own, apart from anybody else. Mm-hmm. And, I guess, we had the naivete probably, or silliness, to think that we could make it in Hollywood. So we loaded up a U-Haul truck, went out to Hollywood to try to do it. We didn't know anyone, and but we established another theater on Pico Boulevard here in LA, and that ran very successfully for 5 years. We did Kentucky Fried Movie, which was based on our show, and then we did Airplane. But we always wanted. Airplane was our first movie idea. Even before Kentucky Fried Movie, we did a draft of Airplane. It wasn't nearly what Airplane eventually became, but it was enough so that it attracted the interest of John Landis, who at that time had only done one movie, and it didn't do any business. But we thought Landis had talent and potential, so we met him, invited him to our show. It's all. The story is told in our book. Mm-hmm. And he was the one who suggested, why don't you do a show of your movie, a movie about your show. See, I get everything exactly opposite. But and he wanted to direct it. So that's really how we learned to direct, from John Landis.
Mm-hmm. And you've talked a lot about your people that inspire you when you create films like Airplane and Naked Gun and all these projects. And you've mentioned them before. You've mentioned, Mel Brooks and the Marx Brothers and Woody Allen, how you get a lot of inspiration from them. And so I was really curious to ask, what elements from their work have impacted the work that you've created, like Airplane and such?
Well, Mel Brooks did parody and satire. He would take a serious movie like Frankenstein and make Young Frankenstein about it, and he did it in black and white, which is good. And he did Blazing Saddles, which was straight parody of Western. So he would take that, but he used comedians. Mm-hmm. And so it was like, it was, and that was good for his era. And Woody Allen also, he was the star of his movies. Yeah. And we loved Woody Allen movies. Before he started doing serious movies, but I also loved Woody Allen's serious movies. And of course, Annie Hall, Manhattan, Crimes and Misdemeanors, brilliant movies. We were always fans of Woody Allen. And then we loved the Marx Brothers, and the Marx Brothers had that zaniness and that nonsensical, and it was smart. The Three Stooges were funny, but it was the same thing over and over again. But the Marx Brothers were actually, had some intellect behind it. Not that we ever thought we had intellect behind anything, but it was a combination of all those things and Mad Magazine, which inspired us. And,
Right.
and that kind of became Airplane, and we were fans of old movies, particularly old black and white film noir melodramas. So we got a hold of this movie called 0 Hour, which was a 1957 potboiler, but it was actually very well crafted by a writer named Arthur Haley. And it starred Sterling Hayden, Dana Andrews, and Linda Darnell in the same roles that we have in Airplane. And we took that plot and then added to it a lot. And of course, we added all the jokes. We made it stupid with all the puns. So that's essentially how Airplane came about.
And involving the jokes and the puns, when you look back at what you made, you're like, there's things that you appreciate. But this is an interesting question that I wanted to ask you personally, looking back on specifically Airplane, reflecting on it, is there anything where you're like, hey, I would have added this, I would have wanted that? Or do you think this is comedically perfect in your opinion?
Well, no, there's always things, somebody said, maybe it was Woody Allen said, he never finishes a movie, he just abandons it. And but we were totally happy with Airplane. And as far as I'm concerned, there's no cringe moments. So I mean, yeah, there were some things we could have done better. I think of little things, but basically, the movie works, and those scenes, Robert Stack couldn't have been better. Leslie Nielsen couldn't. I mean, it was so shocking at the time to see serious actors doing that stuff. And that's why it was hard to get greenlit by any studio, because it was a comedy without comedians, never been done before. And I think the studio kept pushing us to cast Bill Murray or Chevy Chase. And we thought those actors were really funny, master comedians, but not right for Airplane. And the other hurdle for the studio was, we insisted on directing it ourselves, and we were first time directors, but there were 3 of us. So, and that had never been done before. And then the Directors Guild didn't want to give us a 3-man director's credit. And so, Jerry had to go down to the LA City Hall and get his name legally changed to Abrahams and Zucker's. And the Directors Guild spat out a card. And when they found out about it, they were furious. And these stories are all told in the book.
Yes. And I'm really eager to read that. And of course, I really hope the listeners check that out too. Going back, kind of rewinding a bit, in relation to Airplane, you grew up in a Jewish family. And so I wanted to kind of ask you this, in that environment, a lot of values and things like that are passed on. And so did you see any values that were passed on through the way you were raised, put to place and put to action in the creation of Airplane?
Well, I don't know if it was values so much as, our family had a good sense of humor, and our mom and our sister Susan laughed a lot at our jokes, and my dad would say very funny things with a completely straight face. Just he wouldn't go, and he didn't tell a joke. He would say things that were funny but with a straight face. So we didn't know at the time, but that was an advanced look at Leslie Nielsen. Yeah. And so when we grew up around the dinner table, we would be making puns. We were always joking, and that's the kind of family we had. Now, I don't know if that was a Jewish thing or just a Milwaukee thing, but Milwaukee was particularly funny because we knew we weren't such hot stuff from Chicago or New York or LA. And our high school was, we were one suburb north of Milwaukee. And there was something about the water there, about that village that we grew up in, where we laughed at ourselves. And we looking back at it, we thought there were at least 6 or 7 guys in our high school who were funnier than we were, but we, they all got jobs after college or after high school, and we we didn't, and we kind of pursued this sense of humor and started a little theater called Kentucky Fried Theater, and we pursued that, and it didn't happen overnight. It just does happen a day at a time, a week, a month, a year, and pretty soon we find ourselves, we're Hollywood directors. So I mean, it's still incredible to us now to think of where we came from, and that's another thing that's all in the book, was kind of a sweet story, and we still maintain close ties with our high school friends. We're still big Green Bay Packer fans, and and we watch the games together on Sundays with some of our Wisconsin friends who are here in LA.
That's truly wonderful. I think what I find fascinating, what you said there, is taking your roots and applying it to your projects and learning from every experience. You mentioned with Airplane, getting non-comedic actors and going into a comedic role. You've talked about a lot about that, about how you value that, having non-comedic actors play comedic roles. And kind of with Airplane, there's so many awesome stories that you could tell, and of course you mentioned them in the book, and so many funny jokes. Looking back on that film, is there a moment that just you love, that other people might not, that you've talked in conversation, people like, oh, I don't really like that scene, I like this one? I would love to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's amazing. At the time, some reviewers said not all the jokes work, but to us, we would sit in the back of the theater when Airplane came out and watch, and every joke got huge laughs, but not everybody in the audience laughed at every single joke. So, but to us, I think it appeared that every joke was getting a laugh. So, and there are just some things that tickle people more than others.
Mm-hmm.
I have my own favorites and things. There's a scene where the big plane crashes through the glass, and a woman is running away in panic and throws her baby up in the air. You may not even have noticed that, but you notice that after the 10th viewing. There's little things. There's others. There's subtle things where Leslie Nielsen is in the passenger cabin tending to a patient, and he goes, and what the hell's going on up there, when there's some turbulence? And in frame, sticking up in the frame, are women's feet in stirrups. So she's given a woman a gynecological exam, and he's got a speculum in his hand. It's like, it's such nonsense. And so those are the things that still make me laugh a lot when I see the movie.
Yeah, it's such an amazing film, and I again, going back to the book, I really can't wait to read that. And it looks like you had a lot of fun writing that book and writing about the creation, because it hasn't really been told in full.
My wife and my kids have never known this story, and my
Really?
daughter's reading it now. She's a senior in college at the University of Wisconsin, of all places, and she's reading it, and all this stuff, she didn't know any of this. She knew the headlines.
Yeah.
We started in Milwaukee, we started Kentucky Fried Theater, we went to LA, the whole thing. And then she's known every movie that I've done since then.
Mm-hmm.
My son's favorite movie is basketball. So but it's wonderful. But neither of them know this story, which is, I'm so excited to have them read it.
Yes, and especially to your own, with your own kids, sharing that. Maybe sometimes you can sit down and read it again with them. That'll be a great moment to spend with them. Just as a curious question, with Airplane, again, as I mentioned, you grow with every project you're in. How have you seen yourself grown as a writer, as a creative in general?
Oh yeah, well, you never stop learning, and we've learned from every movie we've ever done. And from some movies we didn't learn enough, like from Airplane. We didn't, because we got the plot from Arthur Haley and 0 Hour. We didn't realize how important that story was and the character change. And so in Top Secret, we didn't put that in for Val Kilmer. And it the jokes were better in Top Secret. The jokes were great, but the movie didn't work as well because we didn't really pay enough attention to character. You know, there was story, there was plot. But and then we did a movie called Ruthless People, and that was written. We didn't write that; we just directed it. And Dale Launer really knew his stuff about plot and character. We learned from that. There was a story expert at Paramount named Lindsay Duran. She helped us do the first Naked Gun movie, and we all wrote that together. I directed it myself. But there we paid attention. The audience isn't satisfied, and now I'm teaching film school here, but audience isn't satisfied until some character has learned something. And I always think of it as, you know, there has to be a baby made. Some, you know, there in Top Secret there was no baby, so.
Yeah, and that makes a lot more sense. And I definitely get that. And again, just repeating back what I said, you know, learning from your experience and, you know, Airplane, it definitely, I mean, I wasn't involved, but you were. So it definitely was a rewarding experience, you know, of course, going together with this team, with a whole bunch of people who were just coming to with one purpose to create an awesome and fun and comedical project.
That was the best movie, I mean, that Jerry and Jim and I ever did. It's the best movie any of us have ever done. And it was our first, it was just an amazing experience. And we talk in the book about how our parents rented out the Fox Bay Theater, our hometown theater, where we saw Laurel and Hardy, you know, the Three Stooges, you know, Abbott and Costello. We would see comedies in that theater. And then to have our own movie, it was the week before the national release. So it was the world premiere of Airplane. It was in that theater. And we have a picture of it from that night in the book. And it was amazing. You know, it's just everything, you know, and that's okay with me that was the high point of my life.
Yeah.
I mean, my wedding was nice, but this was truly an amazing thing to happen.
Absolutely. And you said, you know, it's the most significant part of your life, you know, but being creations in film. And I wanted to kind of somewhat conclude with this kind of this is a really deep question. And I love asking my guests this one because it's really interesting. If you were to given the chance to make and produce and, you know, have full creative control over one more movie, never again, what would you want that film to look like? I know you've talked a lot about how you are a big fan of David Crockett, how you've wanted to do something with Adam Sandler. There's so many possibilities. And I just wanted to ask, I wanted to hear insight from you, David. What would that look like? One more movie? Yeah.
I would do a black and white film noir comedy.
Okay.
And I've written one with Pat Proft and Mike McManus. And Pat and Mike I've worked with and I've known them for 50 years. And so we've written one called The Star of Malta. And we are now actually, you know, I don't just dream. I like to try to make the dreams come true. So we're going to make this movie probably at Warner Brothers. Ooh. And go in front of the cameras in February. So I want to do this. It's film noir, exactly as film noir was done. And it's kind of like how we wanted to do Airplane originally, but fortunately, Michael Eisner talked us out of that. And he wanted it to be in color and on a jet. We wanted it to be on a prop plane or anything. But I've always been enamored with film noir. And so, but this movie is going to be exactly that. And we're even going to use the car chases actually taken from these movies. So it's going to be a very low budget.
Okay. I'm really excited for that. And again, really excited for this book release. I always ask my guests this question before I can kind of conclude. I had a bunch of other questions, but I just don't want to take more any of your time. You know, I have a lot of younger folks like myself, you know, a lot of older folks that listen to the show. And I always like to end on a note. What would you like to pass on to anybody listening? If they want to be a creative, if they want to be, you know, a pharmacist, anything, any job. What would you want to say?
Well, I would guess I'd pass on. You know, usually when I get asked that question, what you advise a young person just starting out wanting to be in the entertainment business, I say, well, quit now, you'll never make it. and it always gets a laugh, but then I realize, oh, that's kind of a jerky thing to say. So And I add, but if you can disregard that advice, you'll be halfway there. But in a larger sense, I would say don't wait for anyone to hire you. I mean, that's what we do. We started whatever we could do ourselves, and we started a theater. It had 70 seats. It was in the back of a bookstore. We charged $1 admission, and we just got started. And we did it. We didn't wait. I mean, I know there's a lot of people who are actors out there, and you kind of have to wait to get hired. But even as an actor, you can do your own videos now. I mean, you can do it, and don't let anything stop you. And if you have an idea, don't be intimidated. That's what we talk about in the book. There's this concept that we call Mrs. Zabatsky's Law. And Mrs. Zabatsky was our next door neighbor back in Shorewood, where we grew up. And one summer, a very hot summer day, the roof was really dry, and my dad was burning garbage in our incinerator, and some sparks lit the roof on fire. And Mrs. Zabatsky comes out she was hanging laundry out on her rooftop porch. And she said, "Bert, your house is on fire." So we all, evacuated and called the fire department, waited 10 agonizing minutes for the fire department to arrive. And when they did, they started, trying to hook up make these extension ladders reach the roof, but they got stuck, and the fire was burning the roof. So Mrs. Zabatsky shouts down from her porch, says, "Forget about the ladders, just point the hose up to the roof." They go, "Oh, yeah." And they did, and the fire was out in about 40 seconds. So we kind of learned from that don't have too much respect for experts and the way they do anything. So before we did Airplane, all comedies were done the traditional way. There were comedians there, Mel Brooks and whoever was doing it. And we said, no, we don't have to do it that way. We can do it our own way and convince everybody, and I say in the book, it's like Columbus saying, you can sail west. There's going to be land out there. And everybody thought, well, you're crazy. That's not, you're going to fall off the edge of the earth. But this was this was not as great a feat as Columbus, and we didn't end up, torturing as many natives. But we went ahead. We were headstrong and very naive. Actually, we didn't care about the odds, and the odds were 1,000 to 1 or whatever it was. And it's like Jim Carrey saying in Dumb and Dumber. So you're saying there's a chance, and that's what we did. I hope that answers your question.
That does, and I think that will impact a lot of people that heard that. I appreciate you coming down and sitting and talking briefly about your book. I'll be sure to include where they can find the book and when it's releasing. And I'm releasing this.
Just go to theairplanebook.com, and it makes it easy to order. It'll be delivered to your home October 3rd.